Hi, YouTube. This is a new caveman. Today, I would like to share my experience of replacing the power steering rack and pinion for a 2007 Mercedes-Benz GL450. The problem I'm having is with the power steering fluid leak. This has been going on for actually quite a few years. Initially, it was a minor leak. So in the beginning, I was just trying to deal with the problem by refilling the fluid periodically. But recently, this problem has become very, very bad. It's leaking very heavily from the power steering rack. So it has come to a point where I have to fix it. So now there are a couple of options. Either I can take the car to a shop. One of the side basically says that the average cost for a rack and pinion replacement is between $3,000 and $4,000. So that is definitely a very expensive repair. And then the other option is to do it yourself. I decided to do it myself. I found a YouTube video. It's titled Rack and Pinion Replacement. It has step-by-step instructions on how to do it for not exactly the same car, but a similar model. During this time, I actually ran into quite a bit of problems and issues. It actually turned into three big projects. It lasted about 2 months, on and off during my spare time, evenings and weekends. But the result is did manage to get it repaired. Right now, the car is running pretty good. There's no more power steering fluid leak. The steering is back to normal. It used to be very, very heavy, especially at the low speeds. The end result is really good. However, again, I did run into a lot of problems. And that's part of the reason I would like to share my experience with you all. The way I decided to do it is to break all the different things that I run into topics. So this topics involves different problems, lesson learned, tips and tricks along the way. One thing I would like to point out is that this is not a auto repair kind of video that has step by step how this repair is done. I just didn't plan to record all the different things I've done to this car as part of this process. So my recommendation is if you are interested in step-by-step instructions, go ahead and watch that rack and pinion replacement video first and use that as a base for your repair. And then you can watch this slide deck. I'm going to try this format and see how it works. So I welcome your feedback. Topic number one is the cost of the part itself. So obviously, if you want to replace the rack and pinion, then you need to decide what part to use. So I looking into two options. One is to get a part from an auto parts store. In my case, I chose FCP Euro. I've used it before, and it comes with a lifetime warranty, which is very attractive. So I looked it up, and I found two choices in this case. One of them is from Bosch. It already costs almost $1,300 plus $350 core charge. And then the other option is from TRW, which is a lot cheaper, $339 plus $150 core charge. The other option is to buy a used part, but I decided not to even consider that option because power steering rack and pinion leak seems to be a common problem with these cars, and I just don't want to risk getting a used part without knowing its history. And also the labor cost is going to be pretty extensive, so it really doesn't make sense. I ended up getting a TRW part. The other thing I would like to share is that this is something that I didn't consider. That's a lesson learned actually. It has to do with shipping cost. When you order the part is shipped to your home for free. However, the core return turned out to be cost a lot of money because this is a pretty long object and it's very heavy. I checked a few options like FedEx and UPS and USPS, and USPS has the lowest shipping cost. But even that is $83, so it is still pretty expensive. Lesson learned here is that when you are dealing with an object like this, a part like this, pretty long or bulky or heavy, consider the core return cost as well. Maybe you can get a part locally from a auto parts store or something like that to save some dollars. Topic number 2. So if you do some research on the web and doing this particular job, the question pops up that do you have to take out the differential that is right next to the rack itself? If you read some of the comments, for example, under the video that I mentioned earlier, you will see some people suggested that you do not have to take out the differential. You can just take out the bolts that holding the differential and the rack together. If that's possible, then it will save you a lot of time and effort. But I tried it, as I found out it's not possible. They're right next to each other. It's just not enough room to wriggle that rack out without taking the differential out first. So just go ahead and plan to take that out. Topic number 3, tie rod bolt and nut stuck together. This is actually a problem I ran into as I try to take the differential out. You need to loosen the tie rod and the hub and the axle to make room. This particular one that you see on the picture here is that the nut and bolt for this tie rod, they got stuck together. It seems like nobody has actually taken this out before. So over the 15 years time, they got corroded and they got really just kind of stuck together. So I tried a lot of different things. I even tried the gas torch, the heat method. I tried the lubricant, WD-40. Tried everything. It didn't work out. So I ended up having to cut the bolt head off using a sawzall. And as also part of the a result of this problem, I ended up having to buy a new tie rod. So that's another thing that was not expected. Topic number 4: how to disconnect drive shaft from differential. So in order to take the differential out, you will also have to disconnect the drive shaft. As you can see from here, that's the drive shaft, and this is the differential. So these two parts are stuck together. Again, another problem I run into. So in theory, you should be able to just take out the 6 bolts that are holding them together using a T55 Torx bit. But in reality, even after you taking the 6 bolts out and you try to separate these two, the shaft and the differential, it was just not possible. So I tried a lot of different things. I tried hammer with a flathead screwdriver. I tried the gas torch, WD-40, and couldn't get these two parts separated. And then I tried another method that I found on the web, which is turned out to be a really bad idea, is to use the engine and transmission to get it to loose. So this is actually a very risky operation. So I do not recommend anybody try this. But I did try it because I just wasn't able to loosen these two parts. So I went ahead and tried it. Basically, what I did was that I had the car on the lift with 4 wheels off the ground. And then I started the engine. I put it in drive very briefly so that the drive shaft will basically spin. The idea is that this part will spin and this part, there's no bolts holding these two together, so that should free this up. So I did try it and it kind of worked because it actually got separated by doing this risky operation, but also at the same time, it actually broke the what's inside of this draft. So I ended up having to buy another one because it's broken. But along the way, I actually found the actual solution. The solution that worked out really well at the end is to use an air hammer. So air hammer is one of those air tools that you use along with an air compressor. It looks like here on this diagram here on this picture, and then you basically hook this up to an air compressor, and then you point the tip to this area here, the part that is connecting the two, and you just kind of press against this part, and then really it got separated within a few seconds. So this turned out to be the ideal solution for this problem. Topic number 5, the drive shaft itself. As I said earlier, I broke the drive shaft, so I have to get another one. So for this part, I also looked it up from a FCP Euro. The cost is like $600. So that is kind of expensive. After some research, the drive shaft itself is actually pretty solid. It should actually last the lifetime of the car. So in this particular case, I thought that it is not very risky to get a used part. The only reason I need it is because I tried something stupid and I broke it myself. So I went ahead and got the used one for $50, and that actually turned out to be a good choice. This mistake, using the engine transmission to loosen the drive shaft, it actually caused a lot of rework because I did not realize that I broke it the first time around. I thought that I was able to disconnect it, free it up from the differential. So I reinstalled the differential, the new rack and pinion with this broken drive shaft, and I actually did a test drive, and that didn't turn out very good. So I can hear that is making a lot of noise because again the internal mechanism with the bearings is broken. So end up having to basically redo the work. I have to disassemble the differential, disconnect the differential from the drive shaft, taking that all out, the wheels and the hubs and axles. So it caused a lot of rework. So lesson learned is that again, use the air hammer to loosen it, and then be careful with not to break it. Topic number 6, driver side ABS sensor. So as part of the process of removing the axle from the hub on the passenger side, we also have to disconnect the ABS sensor because it's kind of sitting on the top of the hub. If you don't take that out, then you are not able to kind of swing the hub open to allow the axle to come out. And again, due to the age of this car, the sensor is actually got stuck inside this hole here. So again, I tried to be careful because initially I didn't want to break this sensor because I know it's kind of a fragile part, right? You don't want to use a lot of force. So I tried to gently pry it out and things like that, but I end up actually breaking it anyways. But one solution I did find is that if you use a blade from a drill tool that has this side here, this side is connecting to the tool, the Dremel itself. It has almost the perfect U-shape opening that you can insert under the sensor, and then that way you can separate the sensor from the hub itself. And the other thing I want to point out is that other side of the sensor, if you look at it, this seems to be the same part that has two wires coming out with two sensors. So initially, when I get the new sensor, I thought I bought the wrong model, but I realized that this is actually two different parts that are kind of sitting next to another. Topic number 7, the axles. So again, there's some questions about, do you need to take the axles out of the differential or not? For the driver side, you do not need to take the axle out. You can actually push the axles out this way and get it out of this differential. So for the driver side, you do not need to take the other side of the axle out of the hub. But for the passenger side, you do have to do that. You do have to swing open the entire hub, the wheel hub, and then try to push the axle that way to that direction towards the middle of the car, and you barely have enough room to clear this opening of the hub. Otherwise, you will not be able to take the other side of this axle out of the differential and be able to get the differentials out. Topic number 8. How do you connect the steering coupler to power steering rack? This is a picture in the engine bay that you look down, right? This here is the end of steering column from inside the cabin. And then this is the coupler. This piece here is the steering coupler all the way to here. And then it's connected to the rack underneath this coupler. So what I found out is that in order to connect the coupler to the rack itself, it's much easier, or maybe it's probably necessary to disconnect the coupler from the steering column. So there is a Again, another bolt that you can loosen with a T-Torx bit. That will allow you to put this coupler in a position where you can reach the middle of the coupler in order to push this down into the rack. You have to open up the coupler in a position where you can punch down in the middle of the coupler that is sitting directly above the rack. Punch coupler down all the way down to the rack, because otherwise you will not be able to properly connect those two parts. Topic number 9, the wheel installation. This is kind of off topic, but I did run into this problem many times. The wheels of this car is very heavy, and really there's no place to rest the wheel against anywhere on the hub to lift this heavy wheel and also rest it and then line up all the holes. You have to do like 3 different things at the same time. It's very difficult. So best way that I found to put the wheel back to the hub is that find a long metal stick. So what I did is that I lift up the wheel up and then line it up the top middle hole that is in the wheel and also in the hub. And then I insert the metal stick into this hole so that they allow you to basically line up the holes and then start thread on those lug nuts. Makes things a lot easier. So those are the kind of the 9 takeaways that I learned from doing this rack and pinion replacement. So my final recommendation, if you will, to those people who are thinking or planning to do this rack and pinion replacement is do not take on this job unless you have a lot of spare time, because it can take a lot of time depending upon how many of those problems and issues you run into. And then also, unless you have a lot of experience fixing cars, because it actually involves a lot of pretty difficult tasks of getting the car lifted off the ground. You have to take out the wheels, the axles, the differential, the rack and pinion is, and also you need to have a lot of tools. There's all kinds of tools that I used for this job because again I run into a lot of different problems. So sometimes I have to be very creative and finding the right tool to do the right job. And then you need to have a lot of patience. This is not a job that can be done in a couple hours. If that's your plan, then you will be very disappointed. Certain things have to be done in a certain order. If you don't do that, then you may create new problems like what I did. So again, my recommendation is not to do this yourself. This job is very demanding. But if you do take it on, if you do think that you have all the required items that I mentioned above, and you actually get it done, then it is very satisfying project, and you will be happy about the result. Thank you very much, and have a good day.